If these words reached you right now, stop for a second and feel that. Not everything arrives by accident. Not every message lands in your life at the exact moment your heart is asking silent questions. Something in you has been searching. Something in you has been waiting for a sign, a clear feeling, a deeper truth behind all this confusion. And that is why you are here. The person on your mind, the one you keep replaying in quiet moments, the one whose silence feels louder than any answer, is tied to this moment more than you think. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear may change the meaning of their distance completely. It may break apart the painful story your mind has been repeating late at night. The story that says you were not enough. The story that says they forgot you easily. The story that says the silence means nothing is left. Listen closely. That may not be the truth at all. Sometimes silence is not empty. Sometimes it is full of confusion, full of feeling, full of fear, full of words someone does not know how to speak. And when emotion becomes too deep, too heavy, too real, people do something strange. They step back. They go quiet. They disappear from the outside while everything inside them gets louder. So before you assume this chapter is over, let yourself hear this fully, because what looks finished from a distance is not always finished in the heart. The silence you have been carrying was never as simple as your hurt tried to make it. It was easy to think this was rejection, easy to think they moved on while you stayed behind with questions, easy to believe their quiet meant you mattered less than you hoped. But what if their distance came from emotional overload instead of emotional absence? What if what they felt became too strong, too fast, or too difficult to control in a steady way? For many people, deep feeling does not lead to clear expression. It leads to retreat, not because they do not care, but because caring awakens things they are not ready to face. Old fears, old wounds, old patterns of protecting themselves. And when a connection touches those hidden places, even something beautiful can feel threatening. So instead of speaking, they pull away. Instead of explaining, they go still. From the outside it looks cold. From the inside it can feel like chaos. This is why you need to hear this next part. Silence does not always mean the feeling disappeared. Sometimes it means the feeling became too complicated to name, too heavy to organize, too real to control. And when someone cannot control what they feel, stepping back can become the only way they know to breathe. Do not click away here, because this changes everything. The absence you felt may not have been emptiness at all. It may have been internal conflict, the kind that grows when one part of a person recognizes something deeply meaningful while another part becomes afraid of what that meaning might demand. What they may be experiencing is not simple missing. It is deeper than that. You may have awakened something in them that did not fit neatly into their normal emotional world. Being close to you may have made them feel seen in ways they were not prepared for. It may have reflected parts of themselves they usually keep buried. The hidden parts, the softer parts, the parts that carry longing, fear, regret, and need. When another person brings those places to the surface just by being who they are, the result can be powerful and unsettling at the same time. This creates tension inside them. One part wants to move closer, another part wants to run. One part feels warmth, recognition, and emotional truth. Another part feels exposed and uncertain, so the connection itself becomes hard for them to hold. Their reaction may not have been about your worth. It may have been about what your presence stirred inside them. That is an important difference, because when someone steps away from what they cannot manage internally, it does not erase the impact. It leaves a mark. It lingers. It returns in quiet hours, in random memories, in strange moments when a song, a place, a smell, or a certain time of day brings you back into their mind without warning. That is why something still feels unfinished. Because real emotional impact does not vanish just because someone went silent. It often continues beneath the surface where no one else can see it. And yes, that hidden inner movement can go on for far longer than it appears from the outside. There may be moments when they think of you without planning to. Early in the morning before the day fully begins. Late at night when distractions fade and the truth gets harder to avoid. In small pauses between daily tasks. In empty emotional spaces when life feels routine but something still feels missing. They may form messages in their mind and never send them. They may imagine what they would say if they had the courage, then pull back before the words can become real. Outwardly they may seem normal, steady, busy, even fine. But inner processing often hides behind an ordinary face. That is what makes silence so confusing. Nothing visible seems to be happening, yet inside there can be pressure, memory, and unresolved emotion building slowly over time. What you meant to them may continue showing up in comparisons they do not speak aloud. New conversations may feel flatter. New experiences may feel less alive, not because life stopped, but because certain connections create an imprint that ordinary moments cannot easily replace. And if you have felt strange reminders, sudden emotional shifts, or a heightened awareness around this person, that does not mean something magical is controlling your life. It means the mind becomes sharper around what feels unfinished. Emotion makes patterns feel louder. Uncertainty makes memories brighter. The heart keeps reaching toward what it still does not fully understand. Keep listening, because this next truth matters. What you are feeling is not only about them, it is also about how deeply the human mind wants closure when something meaningful remains unresolved. Over time, this quiet period can start changing both people in ways that are hard to notice while it is happening. They may be questioning their own reactions, wondering why this connection affected them so strongly, wondering why they could not handle it better, wondering whether stepping back protected them or cost them something real. That kind of reflection is not always graceful. It is often messy. It comes in waves. One day a person feels sure they made the right choice. Another day, they feel the weight of what was left unsaid. Internal understanding rarely arrives all at once. It forms slowly, behind the scenes, while life keeps moving. And that is why visible change can seem sudden when it finally appears. By the time someone reaches out, if they ever do, the emotional movement has usually been happening for a long time in silence first. But here is where your focus must shift. Because while they may be changing inwardly, so are you. Waiting has a way of revealing your own emotional structure. It shows you how much of your energy got tied to anticipation. It shows you how quickly the mind can build stories in the absence of facts. It shows you what uncertainty pulls out of you, the hope, the fear, the longing, the need to know. None of that makes you weak. It makes you human. But if you stay in that loop too long, you start living around a possibility instead of inside your own life. And this is the turning point. The goal is not to stop feeling. The goal is to stop letting unanswered emotion become the center of your entire world. As the waiting stretches, something subtle begins to happen. Your attention slowly starts returning to yourself. Not all at once, not in a dramatic, perfect way, but little by little, you notice your own routines again, your own interests, your own body, your own thoughts, your own direction. You begin to remember that your life has always been bigger than one connection, even if that connection touched you deeply. This does not erase what mattered. It does not mean pretending you never cared. It means you stop disappearing into the silence of someone else. You start reclaiming the parts of yourself that got lost in watching, hoping, analyzing, and wondering. And that shift is powerful, because when longing becomes less consuming, clarity starts to grow. The feeling may still be there, but it no longer carries you like a wave you cannot control. You carry it instead. You hold it with more awareness, more steadiness, more space around it. That changes everything. It means any future contact, if it comes, will meet a different version of you. Not someone collapsing under uncertainty, but someone stronger, clearer, and more rooted in their own worth. Do not miss this part. This is where emotional maturity quietly begins. Not when you finally get every answer, but when you learn how to live fully, even without them. Not when the silence ends, but when it no longer decides your value. That kind of inner shift is not small. It changes the way you see them, the way you see yourself, and the way you would handle whatever comes next. If a message ever does break through this silence, it will likely not arrive in the polished way people imagine during lonely nights. It will not be perfect. It will not be smooth. It may come unexpectedly, at an ordinary time, in an ordinary moment, and suddenly nothing will feel ordinary anymore. A message, a call, an appearance you did not plan for. And what gives it weight will not just be the words, it will be everything behind them, everything delayed, everything avoided, everything that sat inside them too long and finally pushed its way into form. When emotions have been held back for a long time, they rarely come out cleanly. They come in fragments, in pauses, in sentences that break halfway through because the feeling is bigger than the language. There may be hesitation, not because they feel nothing, but because they feel too much to say it simply. There may be long silences between words. There may be an honesty that surprises even them. And if that moment ever happens, you may have to listen to more than the surface. You may have to hear the truth underneath the awkward delivery, underneath the imperfect phrasing, underneath the emotional weight they struggle to carry calmly. Because sincerity is not always fluent. Sometimes the most real things are said badly. Sometimes truth shakes when it speaks. Sometimes a person sounds uncertain, only because they are trying to fit something very deep into words that feel too small. That kind of moment would not just be emotional release. It would be proof that something inside them changed enough that staying silent no longer felt possible. But even if contact returns, that does not automatically mean everything becomes clear or easy. This part is important, so stay with me. Real feeling does not erase fear. Missing someone does not instantly create readiness. A person can care deeply and still not know how to rebuild what was broken, delayed, or left uncertain. They can recognize your value and still struggle with trust, timing, vulnerability, or the weight of their own past. So if reconnection ever happens, it will not only be about what they feel, it will also be about what has changed in both of you during the time apart. Because time does change people. Reflection changes people. Pain changes people. Growth changes people. Two people meeting again after distance are never exactly the same two people who last stood in front of each other. That is why any return carries a choice inside it. Not just the choice to reconnect, but the deeper choice of what kind of connection is possible now. Can what existed before return in a healthier form? Do your emotional needs align more clearly than they once did? Are both people more honest now? More steady, more aware of their patterns, or does the connection belong more to memory than to the present? These are not small questions, and they matter more than fantasy, because longing can make familiarity feel like destiny, even when the deeper truth is more complicated. So if the door ever opens again, it cannot be walked through with blind hope alone. It has to be met with honesty, self-respect, and the courage to see what is real, rather than only what is desired. There is another truth here, and it may be the one you need most. While it is natural to focus on whether they return, the deeper story has always been about what you become while nothing is certain. This is where real transformation lives, in the waiting, in the moments when no answer comes and you still have to wake up, still have to move through the day, still have to carry yourself forward. That process can either break your center or build it, and slowly, if you let it, it builds it. You begin to see that your emotional balance cannot stay in someone else's hands. Your sense of worth cannot keep rising and falling with their presence or absence. Your life cannot remain paused around a silence you did not create and cannot control. This realization does not harden you, it steadies you. It teaches you to feel deeply without handing away your entire foundation. It teaches you to care without disappearing. It teaches you to love without making uncertainty your home. And once that lesson starts settling in, something shifts. You stop waiting in the same desperate way. You start living again, really living. Not because all the questions are answered, but because you are no longer defined by the lack of answers. That is powerful. That is freedom beginning quietly. And from that place, any future interaction becomes clearer. You can see what is genuine and what is not. You can sense whether someone brings truth or just temporary emotion. You can tell the difference between real growth and a short-lived wave of regret. That kind of clarity protects your heart without closing it. The intensity you once felt may begin to soften, not because the connection meant less, but because you are finally becoming bigger than the waiting. That is what healing often looks like. It does not always remove the feeling. It changes your relationship to it. Instead of being pulled under by hope one day and fear the next, you begin to stand in a more grounded place. You can remember without collapsing. You can wonder without chasing. You can feel the weight of what mattered without making it the only thing that matters. And when that happens, even your idea of them changes. They stop being the center of an unfinished story and become one meaningful chapter in a life that is still opening. This matters more than you think, because many people confuse emotional intensity with emotional truth. But intensity alone does not tell you what is right for you. Sometimes it only shows you where your deepest needs and wounds were touched. What you do with that awareness is where the real path begins. You can use it to become more conscious of your attachments, your patterns, your hunger for certainty, your fear of being forgotten, your tendency to place too much meaning on what remains unresolved. And that awareness does not make the connection less meaningful. It makes you wiser inside it. It gives you back your own power. It lets you hold the memory with open eyes instead of closed hands. Do not skip past this. The most important answer may not be whether they come back. It may be who you are by the time you no longer need that answer to feel whole. Still, there are moments when life circles back in unexpected ways. People do return. Old silence does break. Hidden truths do rise when carrying them becomes too heavy. And if that happens here, it may come with a rawness you did not expect. Not small talk, not shallow excuses, not a casual attempt to slide back into your world as if nothing mattered. It may come with vulnerability they have never shown you before, with a kind of emotional exposure that only appears after someone has been alone with themselves long enough to stop running from what they feel. They may not know how to explain it well. Their words may come in the wrong order. Their voice may shake. Their honesty may look messy. But the deeper thing to watch will be this. Has silence changed them, or has it only made them lonely? That is the question, because genuine growth leaves signs. Greater self-awareness, more responsibility, more truth, more willingness to face what was avoided before. If all they bring is emotion without clarity, longing without accountability, then the old pattern may still be waiting underneath. But if what they bring feels different, steadier, humbler, more real, then you will feel that too. And even then, the choice will still be yours. Not the choice of the old version of you who feared losing them. The choice of the newer version of you who has learned how to stand without being held up by uncertainty. That version of you will know something important. A return is not valuable just because it happens. It is valuable only if it meets you in truth, not confusion, and offers something healthier than what silence left behind. So let this settle in your heart in the simplest way. Their silence may have held more feeling than you understood. Their distance may have come from inner conflict, not indifference. Their quiet may have been filled with thoughts, memories, and emotions they could not carry clearly enough to share. That is possible, very possible. But your peace cannot be built on that possibility alone. Your peace has to come from something deeper and more stable than waiting for another person to explain what they never knew how to say. Your peace begins when you stop measuring your worth by what remains unspoken. It begins when you return your energy to your own life, your own growth, your own future, your own inner steadiness. It begins when you accept that what is meant to reach you will do so in its own time, and what does not return cannot erase what you are. That is the point where fear starts losing its grip. That is the point where hope becomes lighter, cleaner, less desperate. And that is the point where life opens again. New experiences, new understanding, new strength, maybe even new love, in whatever form your path is meant to hold. Because your story does not end in someone else's silence. It keeps moving. It keeps shaping you. It keeps teaching you how to remain open without losing yourself. And whether a message comes tomorrow, months from now, or never at all, one truth remains. What was real in you was real. What you felt mattered. What you learned matters even more. And the version of you rising through this uncertainty is already becoming stronger than the ache that first brought you here. If you feel the weight of unfinished emotion even now, that makes sense. The mind always wants to turn uncertainty into certainty. It wants to predict the ending. It wants to know if the silence means loss, delay, fear, love, regret, or something else entirely. But not every chapter reveals itself on command. Some things unfold only after both people have lived enough, felt enough, and changed enough to meet the truth without running from it. That is why forcing clarity too hard often pushes peace further away. Real emotional clarity usually arrives when pressure eases, when the chasing stops, when the overthinking loosens, when life is allowed to breathe again. In that breathing space, what is real becomes easier to recognize. If something is forming, it will form in its own shape. If something is ending, that truth will also become clearer with time. Either way, your task remains the same. Stay rooted in yourself. Keep your heart open, but keep your center too. Let memory be memory, without turning it into a prison. Let longing teach you without letting it rule you. Let silence reveal what it came to reveal. And if one day their words finally reach you, hear them with calm, not hunger. Hear them with clarity, not desperation. Hear them as someone who has already returned to their own strength, because that is the real shift. Not whether they speak, but whether you have become someone who can face any outcome and still remain whole. That is where peace starts. That is where your power returns. And that is where this story becomes bigger than waiting. So for now, breathe. Let the silence be what it is without turning it into proof that you were forgotten. Let the questions exist without letting them consume every corner of your day. Let the connection mean what it meant, but do not let it become the only meaning in your life. Keep moving. Keep rebuilding. Keep giving your energy to the parts of yourself that still need your love, your attention, your care. Because the deeper lesson here is not only about whether another person realizes your value, it is about whether you realize it deeply enough that no silence can take it from you. And once that settles into your spirit, everything changes, waiting changes, memory changes, even love changes. It becomes less about being chosen and more about living from truth, less about chasing a return and more about honoring what your heart has learned. If they come back, you will meet that moment differently. If they do not, you will still have become someone stronger, wiser, and more fully alive than before. That is not a small outcome. That is profound. That is the kind of change that lasts. So do not fear this season just because it is unclear. Some of the deepest inner shifts happen in silence. Some of the strongest versions of you are built in the unanswered spaces. And one day you may look back and realize that what felt like emotional suspension was also a quiet rebuilding, not of the connection alone, but of yourself. And in the end, that may be the part that matters most.